Hello, and welcome to this session from Infoblox, Next Level Security for the Cloud Managed Enterprise. I'm Kripa Srivatsan, Director of Product Marketing, focused on cybersecurity solutions at Infoblox. And in terms of what we're going to talk about today, I will cover some business drivers that a lot of organizations are going through today, and what are some challenges when they're trying to adopt these new technologies and new ways of doing business. We will also cover Infoblox's solution, which is a cloud managed, cloud delivered networking and security solution that addresses some of these challenges to enable companies to focus on their business drivers and act on their business needs. And then we also wrap up with some resources for more information. Now, when you look at where enterprises were a few years ago, right? The way networks were designed a few years ago, the traditional architecture included a lot of the applications, a lot of the users sitting in headquarters, and applications will be in a physical data center somewhere. And people who are working in branch offices or remote locations generally VPN'd back into the data center to get access to their applications and get their work done. Now, what happens, 5, 10 years later, what's happening today is that networks are more distributed. You have direct branch to internet access in a lot of the branches, simply because they wanted to provide better user experience for employees working in those branch offices, and also the increased use of SaaS applications, right? You have Office 365, Salesforce, Google Suite, etc. And those type of applications are becoming ubiquitous in enterprises and companies today. So because of the adoption of SaaS, we see a lot of direct internet connection from branch offices. They're not always VPNing back to the data center or the HQ. And then you also have deployment of BYOD or IoT devices, not just in HQ, but everywhere. And you have adoption of technologies like SD-WAN at the branches to provide better user experience for the employees there. So when you look at this new paradigm shifts, right, networking and security cannot be the same as it was 5, 10 years ago, right? There are a lot of challenges for companies as they're moving to these transformations, right? They're basically transforming their workplace, and how people work is changing. And so some of the challenges in managing such a hybrid, distributed network is, how do you make sure that network teams and IT teams have visibility into all the assets that are connecting to the network, right? How do you know where your resources are, or what devices people are connecting from, things like that? How do you manage the whole employee base, not just at HQ, but also at remote locations, and now increasingly working from home, right? So how do you get visibility and management into all of that at scale? How do you manage SaaS applications, cloud workloads, on-premise workloads, right? Everything needs to be managed at scale, and it's getting harder and harder as the networks get more complex. And then also automation. Automation is key to reducing the burden on operations teams, not just IT operations, but security operations as well. So how do you reduce the burden on IT staff by automating a lot of the workflows? I think that's another challenge that companies are facing today. On the security side, you see increased attack surface, right? I talked about IoT. I talked about direct internet access from branch locations. Data is now residing everywhere. It's not only within a data center. Sensitive data could be in the cloud. It could be on IoT devices that are processing information. It could be on employees' devices at home or in branch locations. So you don't really know where sensitive data could be. And attackers know that the surface has expanded, and they can attack from different angles, right? From different entry points. IoT devices are a perfect entry point because they are low-cost devices built with no security or very little security in place. So that becomes a vulnerable attack point. Cloud applications, SaaS applications, we've seen an increase in threats and attacks on cloud infrastructure. And also, the type of attacks are getting more and more complex. So that adds to the burden to security operations teams as well. And security operations teams are pretty thin in terms of having enough resources at their fingertips, right? They're lightly staffed, or they're not able to find good skilled security professionals. And so they're having to deal with a lot of alerts, with a thin staff. And also, a lot of it is done manually. So, like I said before, more automation can help reduce the burden on the security operations teams. And of course, how do you detect threat and remediate all these threats at scale, not just at your data center, but wherever your users are, wherever your data is, wherever your applications are. And that is crucial in making this multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, distributed network to work seamlessly. When you look at security threats in particular, 2020 has seen a lot of targeted ransomware attacks, and it continues to rise as the year progresses. Just last week, on October 28th, there was an alert from US CISA agency on ransomware attacks trying to target healthcare and public health sector institutions. And they were using variants such as Arva UK Ryuk, which was a top ransomware variant for this year, and also another one that's a top ransomware variant that's been used in attacks are SamSam. COVID-19 has affected the whole world, and attackers know that people are hungry for more information, and they are less likely to not click at some email that says you can get more information about the spread, things like that. So even when it started, even when the pandemic started, there was a barrage of spam emails claiming to provide information about the pandemic. And a lot of these emails were obviously phishing emails, and they were meant to distribute several infostealer malware like Agent Tesla, Loki Bot, Formbook, etc. And we've also seen cases where websites offering maps of coronavirus information and distribution or spread, they have been weaponized to deliver, information stealer type malware like ISO wrote. So these things are continuing. They are by no means subsiding. And this is the reality of today as threats evolve. Like I mentioned earlier, security operations teams are continuing to be overburdened, and they're using siloed security tools, right? They're using next-gen firewalls or sandboxing or SIMs or gateways, proxies, but these tools are siloed. They're meant to do what they were designed to do, and but they rarely share information. So a lot of the times, the security operations teams have to take data and share it across the silos manually to correlate events and to take action. Of course, they also get a lot of alerts, as we all know, with all the different tools that they have deployed on the networks. There is a huge skills shortage, like I mentioned earlier. And when you look at some of these statistics, the average time to identify a breach is still more than 200 days, right? Every year there is a survey or there's a study that identifies the average time to identify a breach, and that has been consistently close to 200 days. And the problem with that is the longer malware resides within a network, the more damage it can do. So early detection is key, as you guys all already know. And the more data, the more integrations, the more automation you can get with your security infrastructure and your security stack, that average time to identify a breach will go down, right? So that's one of the key factors that we should take into consideration when you're looking at your security posture and your security stack. We did talk about security response being resource intensive and manual, and as you can see, 58% in a recent study said their incident response is somewhat manual, and 64% of practitioners said that their security inspection was highly resource intensive, right? So again, coming back to the point about the need for automation and integrations in your security stack is crucial for mitigating some of these challenges. So we talked about challenges. We talked about, how networks are changing and companies are adopting SaaS and IoT and distributed networks and work from home, etc. So how are companies managing the transformations, the workplace transformations? How are they adapting, and how are they trying to overcome the challenges? Is obviously, multi-cloud adoption has become the dominant IT paradigm, right? So companies are relying more and more on not just on-premises infrastructure and solutions, but also cloud-based infrastructure solutions. And again, even in the cloud-based solutions, they are not just going with and they're not just migrating their workloads to one type of cloud provider. They're migrating their workloads to multiple cloud providers, and they're also increasingly leveraging a combination of on-prem and cloud workloads. So that becomes the dominant IT paradigm. The second thing they're doing is operational simplicity and DevOps deployment model is becoming more and more pervasive, because that gives them that agility, but also simplicity to get the work done quicker and with more quality, right? So that becomes a big imperative for enterprises. And then finally, more and more companies are consuming network and security services from the cloud, or as a service, if you want to call it that, right? So they're looking for vendors who can provide network and security services from the cloud, so that they don't have to manage, deploy, and maintain all the infrastructure on premises. And the increasing architecture that's being used is cloud native architecture. And we'll talk a little bit about what that means and what benefits companies get when they go with a vendor that provides a cloud native architecture. So let's talk about what Infoblox can provide for networking and security. Infoblox provides foundational network and security services for about 8,000 plus customers in all verticals, including healthcare, financial, government, retail, manufacturing, higher ed, things like that. So we have customers in almost every vertical you can think of, and they all leverage Infoblox for highly resilient DNS, DHCP, and IPAM services, but also for our DNS security services as well. So we'll talk a little bit about what Blox One is, and how that cloud managed solution can help enterprises improve their networking automation and also improve their security posture. So as I mentioned earlier, Infoblox provides DNS, DHCP, and IPAM services, which helps you to control, automate, and secure the modern workplace. When you look at some of the features under control umbrella, you can think about things like visibility. I mentioned this earlier, knowing what's connecting to your network, not just in your data center, but knowing what's connecting in your branch office, where your cloud applications or cloud workloads are, what IoT devices are on the network, things like that. That ubiquitous 360-degree visibility you can get with IPAM and DHCP solutions from Infoblox. If you're migrating workloads to the cloud, you can leverage DDI from Infoblox for simplifying that deployment. And of course, there's a lot of discovery capabilities as well. When it comes to automation, we can automate a lot of DDI and IPAM workflows, and also automate a lot of the DevOps, SecOps integration and orchestration. And finally, from a security perspective, which is where we're going to focus on a little bit more in the rest of the presentation, is Infoblox offers cloud managed or cloud delivered, actually, DNS security solutions as a first layer of defense in your security stack. And the reason I say DNS is a first layer of defense is because every point of connection, every device, anything that happens from an endpoint or an end host makes a DNS request first. So when it makes a DNS request, if you leverage threat intel and analytics on the DNS, you can make that DNS a security control point and prevent devices from going to malicious destinations, right? Or prevent already compromised devices from calling their command and control server. So we'll take a little bit deeper look into what that looks like. DNS security can also protect sensitive data because a lot of the times data gets exfiltrated over the DNS channel. So if you have a solution in place that can help protect or detect the data exfiltration and block it, you can do that at the DNS level. And of course, one of the things I talked about earlier is automation and integrations. And Infoblox solution actually integrates with 40 or 50 different security tools that you may already, many of which you may already be using in your network. And when you integrate, you can actually reduce the response times. And talk a little bit about how that works as well. So from a cloud native perspective, so our security solution is hosted on a cloud native platform called Blocks One, and again, as I mentioned earlier, it's built using cloud native principles, and what this provides, and it's built using Kubernetes and Docker and all container based architecture. And what this does is it provides agility and scale to a customer. You can spin up more applications on it. You can add number users, you can add services, or you can unsubscribe or delete services or get away from using those services at the touch of a button, right? Or it's so easy to do, and it's completely cloud managed, so you don't have to, or cloud delivered, so you don't have to worry about managing huge infrastructure on prem. You still control the solution, but the infrastructure is hosted on the cloud and in the cloud, and you don't have to worry about deploying infrastructure on premises. So the cloud native platform Blocks One provides that resiliency and hyperscale. And the solutions that we have on top of our Blocks One platform are Blocks One Threat Defense, which is the focus of this presentation. And also we have a DDI solution called Blocks One DDI as well. So let's look at the security offering that's delivered on top of Blocks One. So what is Blocks One Threat Defense? Blocks One Threat Defense is recursive DNS security in the cloud that protects all devices, that protects devices anywhere, right? You could be working from home, you could be working from a coffee shop, you could be working from your office, right, or your branch location. It doesn't matter where you're working from. It protects your device from going to a malicious destination that is known to be hosting, let's say, ransomware or phishing, part of a phishing attack, things like that. It can prevent you from going to those destinations. And secondly, it can also, if your device is already compromised, it can detect and block any CNC communications from your device to known CNC servers. So what that does is now it knows that it prevents further damage from happening and prevents the malware from spreading laterally. And also, you can flag your device for remediation. So it uses DNS as a control point. So what I mean by that is every time you try to go to a destination, you make a DNS request from your device, the Blocks and Threat Defense will intercept that. It'll check to see that it's not going to a bad site or malicious destination, and then it will forward the request to wherever you're going if it is found to be benign. Now, the other thing that Blocks One does is also detect and block data exfiltration. As I mentioned earlier, DNS can be the channel for leaking sensitive data out of a network. So, and we've seen this happen quite often. So, Blocks One Threat Defense uses AI ML based analytics to detect data exfiltration over the DNS channel. So if your laptop is exfiltrating data over DNS queries, this will detect that and block it. And it detects and blocks a few other threats like DGAs, fast flux, and things like that. The other thing to note about the solution is, like I said, it protects devices everywhere. But the other thing to note is if you have on premises, a big on premises footprint, a big data center, or a big, HQ, and you want to have on premises Blocks One Threat Defense, you can do that too, which runs on top of Infoblox DNS appliances on your infrastructure on premises. And the on premises Blocks One works seamlessly and integrates with the cloud to provide a hybrid seamless solution. So now your users in the office and your work from home users are protected using the same solution and the same security enforcement. It also integrates with a lot of the other security tools you may already be using in your ecosystem. Like I mentioned earlier, integration and automation is key to reducing incident response times. And what this does is, as soon as Blocks from Threat Defense detects something malicious, it can send a notification to a vulnerability scanner to scan that device for vulnerabilities. It can send a notification to an ITSM tool like ServiceNow to raise a ticket automatically and say this device assigned to this user has made a bad DNS request, so that could be infected. So the IT team will know that they need to come and check out your device. So there are a lot of workflow integrations that the solution provides. And what this does is it makes your existing ecosystem even more effective and even more efficient. For work from home users specifically, now let's say due to the pandemic, you have a lot of your employees working from home. So for work from home users, traditionally, they may have some endpoint solution or an antivirus on their device. They may be VPNing back into the corporate headquarters to access certain applications and data, or they may be split tunneling, right? They may be going to the cloud for certain applications, say certain SaaS applications. So what Blocks from Threat Defense does is when you do have a split tunnel and you have some of the traffic coming to the cloud, Blocks from Threat Defense can intercept that and again detect malware communication, phishing, ransomware, and other modern malware. It can detect any malware activity from that device and block it. Access to Blocks from Threat Defense is through a lightweight, easy to install agent, and that agent can be deployed on an endpoint using standard SEO tools or whatever endpoint deployment tools that you may have. This should work with most of those endpoint deployment tools, and then the device is protected, right? The other thing you could do with Blocks and Threat Defense is also, let's say you don't want your work from home users to access certain types of content on the website. So it could be social media, it could be violence, right? It could be pornography. So you can set configurations in such a way that you can block access to certain types of content. And what that does is it keeps your employees productive, and you also can reduce the load on other security tools that are trying to do the same thing. Doing it at the DNS level is actually a much more cost effective and a scalable way to do block access to certain types of content than doing it at a web proxy, for example. The solution uses a combination for detection and blocking. The solution uses a combination of threat intel as well as AI/ML based analytics. And the reason for that is threat intel is great for detecting and blocking, traffic related to known threats, right? So you know that the destination is malicious. It's there in the threat intel feed, and now the DNS server is acting on the threat intel feed to block requests to that destination. But it doesn't help much when it comes to zero-day attacks, right? Where you don't know that the destination is malicious. Things like data exfiltration, where attackers can set up new infrastructure to do those type of attacks. Lookalike domains that keep changing their identity frequently, things like that. You won't know from threat intel alone whether that destination is malicious or not. So for that, you need to augment your the threat intel capabilities with what's called cloud-based analytics, which uses AI/ML and does analytics on DNS requests that are going out to the internet to check for certain type of threats like data exfil, DGA, etc. So what this does is it provides that 1-2 punch along with threat intel to make sure that you're covered for known threats as well as zero-day threats. I talked a lot about the ecosystem and how the solution integrates with the rest of the security stack that you may already be using. So this kind of shows you the breadth of the integrations that we have. We support various protocols, Stix, Taxi, RESTful APIs, and third-party protocols to do those integrations. With a wide range of categories of security tools, including tip solutions, SIM, vulnerability management, NAC solutions. You could have a device that's infected, and you could have Blocks on Threat Defense tell your NAC solution to knock the device off the network and not allow it back until it's been cleaned up and things like that. So a lot of great use cases here when it comes to integrating with the rest of the security stack. And we have a lot of demos as well where we can show that in case you're interested. So just to summarize, Blocks on Threat Defense provides that visibility and security for your headquarters, for your work from home users, for your branch offices, for your cloud deployments, and whatever is in between, right? So you have one cloud-based, cloud-delivered, cloud-native solution that protects your data and applications wherever they reside. And in terms of key takeaways, workplaces are transforming. It's no longer about data and applications being in a headquarters or a physical data center. They're everywhere. Users are everywhere. Employees are working from anywhere. So these workplace transformations are happening, and it may be happening in your companies as well. So how can you get that foundational network and security services? It is by using cloud managed, cloud delivered DNS, DHCP, and IPAM along with security to eliminate those silos, improve your security posture, and also get more automation and ROI for your security stack. And as I mentioned earlier, the cloud native architecture provides that agility and scale that today's modern enterprises need. So before I end the presentation, I wanted to make you guys aware of some resources that are available for you to take a look at. Infoblox does have a cyber threat intel unit that has more than 10 years of experience in the cyber intelligence space, and the team publishes hundreds of valuable indicators daily that are leveraged by our Blocks on Threat Defense solution, but also they produce valuable cyber threat reports for public consumption, right? So you want to know more about the Ryuk ransomware, you can go to our website and check out, under the cyber intelligence unit, you can check out all our reports that are available. And we publish at least one or two a week. And that gives more information how a particular attack works, what are the attack steps, what are the best practices for mitigation and things like that. And the intelligence that the cyber intel unit provides is very accurate, highly timely, and reliable. So there's tons of research that goes into these reports. So in case you're wondering, what are the latest threats that are that are out there, come to our website and you can get more information about those latest threats. With that, I want to thank you for joining me for this presentation. And I also wanted to thank our partner, Nova Red, for giving us this opportunity. Hope you have a great day.